Football changed an hour into the 1963 European Cup final. AC Milan had just levelled the scores against the defending champions Benfica when Gino Pivatelli caught the great Portuguese inside forward, Mario Coluna, with an extremely late challenge, breaking a bone in his foot. Now, in the days before substitutions, it was a foul that effectively decided the game. Jose Altafini scored his second of the game to give Milan victory, and the age of individualism had yielded to the age of the system. The Milan coach Nereo Rocco always denied there was a cynical plan to target Coluna, Benfica's playmaker, and that may be true. But equally, his approach, dropping the prolific forward Paolo Barison for Pivatelli, who was given a specific brief to cover Coluna, was a major contributory factor. This was a new way of conceptualizing the game. And for Bela Gutmann, the stylish Hungarian, who'd led Benfica to the 1961 and 62 European titles, the game was primarily about great players and attack. Rocco was part of the new generation, who saw a team less as 11 individuals than a system of 11 component parts. Now, Milan's victory was followed up in 1964 and 1965 by Inter under Helenio Herrera. The Italian clubs were playing a specific form of system that soon became notorious, Catenaccio. Now, the legend has it that Catenaccio was invented by the Salernitana coach Gippo Viani, who, unable to sleep as he fretted about his team's defensive shortcomings, went for a walk along the seafront. As dawn broke by the dockside, he saw the fishing fleet coming in and noticed that they used a reserve net to catch those fish that had slipped through the main net. And he had a revelation. He could move a midfielder behind his defensive line to fulfill a similar function. Now, clearly the story is romanticised. It seems that Viani may have got the idea from Antonio Valesi, an attacking midfielder at Salernitana who'd experimented with a sweeper in the amateur team he ran in the summer because of limited player availability. The Austrian, Karl Rappan, had used a libero with Servette of Geneva as early as the 1930s, as he tried to find a way for his semi-pros to compete with fully professional touring teams. But it was Rocco and Herrera who began to use what had been seen as the right of the weak, a means of stifling superior opponents with the strongest teams. Catenaccio, though, was not the only system. Defeat to Hungary in 1953 had sent English football into a rare period of introspection, and the result was the emergence in the early 60s of a generation of system coaches, of whom the two most notable were Bill Shankly at Liverpool and Don Revie at Leeds. When Liverpool beat Leeds to win the 1965 FA Cup final, the response from the football establishment was horror at a game characterised not by non-stop attacking, but by patient build-up. The final was deemed unwatchably tedious, although to modernise, conditioned to a systems game, there's nothing particularly remarkable about it. In the newspaper The Mirror the following Monday, the reliably furious columnist Peter Wilson wrote, "I'm told that if we are to survive the rigours of the World Cup, we must forget individualism, the brilliant flashes of inspiration which transform a treadmill into a flying machine, the genius which transmutes a muddied oaf into a booted genius." But a year later, it was just such a systems-based approach that propelled England to victory. As someone brought up in the best push-and-run tradition at Tottenham, and the right-back in the England team that had lost 6-3 to Hungary, Sir Alf Ramsey knew English football had to change. In the months leading up to the 1966 World Cup, he gradually prepared the side to play without wingers in a sort of 4-1-3-2, and with a rudimentary form of pressing. He played with a single winger in all 3 games in the group stage, a calculated ploy to give opponents as little time as possible to adapt to his real plan. Against Argentina in the quarter-final, he finally unveiled the wingless formation, which he'd trialled in a friendly away to Poland shortly before the tournament. England won the World Cup, and international football had moved to systematisation just as surely as the club game had. Rinus Michels with Ajax in Amsterdam and Valery Lobanovsky with Dinamo in Kiev would take the concept to greater heights in the decade that followed, proving that system football was just as capable of being attacking as defensive. And while there are still many who argue for players to be permitted more freedom, nobody serious doubts the importance of the team unit. The 60s are when that changed, and why there's such a difference between football before that era and football after. The 1963 European Cup final and Pivatelli's foul on Coluna was when modern football really began. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and James Horncastle. With the latest transfer news and insight on every Premier League football story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football.